Hello and welcome to CS230. This is lecture 16 and lesson 5. And in this lesson we're going to look at performing the CRUD activities that we've already seen with the Mongo shell and Node.js with MongoDB's PHP driver. So really it's just a getting started guide. I have a single program which I'm going to work through that shows you and demonstrates all of the CRUD activities, and again this particular one was based on the MongoDB's quick start guides for the driver. Okay, so once and as before, you've got to make a connection to MongoDB with PHP, and we talked a little bit about this earlier on. There's some complications around installing and using the PHP MongoDB client if you're trying to work in an online playground, but it should be fine if you've got a good setup with PHP that you know and understand on your local machine, and it works fine with macOS for me, Windows and Linux of course. So the client is MongoDB/client, and again you need to make an authenticated connection. I always like to see authenticated connections, but if you don't want to do that, you just want to play, then you can make a connection to the client by specifying a URL here that doesn't include any username or password details. Okay, so as before, I'm placing my connection details into a separate file. So I have a dbconfig/localmongo.php, and you would have seen me doing this for remote MySQL when we talked in the last lecture. So again, we're just going to require this one, and then I usually have one for local and one for remote installations of my MongoDB. So we can just have a quick look at the actual code for this example here, and again you can find it here at the tutorial for PHP on the Mongo docs directory. So this bit here require once their vendor autoload.php. This was created by Composer, and that's the high level MongoDB client software, and that's provided by MongoDB in order to be able to do your work within PHP. So here I have one password details file for the remote Mongo, and here's the local one. And because I used the remote one when I was doing the Node.js, I'm going to just use the local configuration here for this PHP. So I'm creating a client, doesn't matter, they both provide a URL string, and I use that to create my clients. So we got here, it's good, we're sorted. Okay, so let's just quickly go back to our connection here. Okay, so with CRUD, again, I'm using the 1.6 PHP driver from MongoDB and its quick start guide, and again all of the CRUD activities are expressed as methods or functions. They're accessible via the client object that you create up here, and then one thing to notice is that unlike Node, where we had to set everything up as a series of callback functions, and just to be sure that everything worked fine. And if you work through my document, you'll see a little bit more about synchronizing and using callbacks to make everything work as you would expect. Everything is synchronous here, okay, with PHP. So we can make a call to the server one after another without worrying about any kind of timing whatsoever. The application just waits until one command has completed before you move on to the other command. And then, so you can still comment and uncomment. So I've got all the various blocks here. So here's an insertion, here's insertion many, and you can comment out the blocks that you're not interested in checking, or you can just let it all run. I've chosen example details and data here so that nothing conflicts or missing. So everything should work as you progress through the exercise. It's not long. It's a reasonable one. And I've added some notes in here from the driver. I've added some of my own notes in here. So if you work through the code, you should be fine with seeing how it all works. So let's quickly work through this and you get a sense of what's going on. Okay, so so you, again, once you have your client, you need to say you're using the test database and you're going to be using the documents collection. And let's have a quick look to show we don't have, okay, we don't have any documents collection here. So when we run this, we should get some stuff happening. I'll clear here, and we'll be working through our PHP here. I'll probably have it set up. Okay, so it's the order test connection. Okay, so this is the one we're going to run, test CRUD docs.php. So look, we'll run it first and then we work through it. Okay, so everything is fine. So it all works fine. Lots of output here. So I connected to the server, I inserted one document. I inserted 3 more documents, and I'm getting the details for those documents. Then I did a query for Tony McNamara, found the email. I queried for collections for anyone that had grey email using regular expressions. So I got Tony McNamara and Lee Collins. Then I did all sorts of other matching and checking. And then I did some extra work on removals and then deleted one document. So all of that stuff happened. We can go up and have a check up here just to see that the documents collection still exists. Yeah, and there it is. The documents is in there. And let's have a look at who's left in this. And here are all the people that are left in this particular database. So lots of stuff worked out fine. You'll see some of the latter modifications here relate to adding loyalty points options for people and then updating the points and so forth. But we'll see that when we look at the actual code. Okay, so we started with the code then. Oh, well, I looked at the code in the markdown document, okay? Okay, so this just allowed us to insert something, and here we use the insert one method. We have an array bracketed here, and this time, you know, instead of colons, we're using this arrow notation, which is just another name for comma, and so it allows us to be able to insert data. So it's a bit like we've seen previously, okay? Not too surprising there. And then this just tells us that we're inserted and we're able to get the ID of the item that was last inserted. And this is useful if we do want to have some normalized collection where we want to have do multiple inserts and then insert the ID of something, some record or document that we've already inserted into the collection and use it in another document. Okay, that's fine. Here I'm inserting many, and then it's much the same as insert one, except we're separating them all by commas. And each one is bounded by the square brackets here. So another 3 records. Again, these data are ones that I automatically generated for this exercise. And you would have seen them with the MySQL example as well. Finding many. So that's just a find. And we're looking up for all the records that have a last name matching McNamara. And then, you know, and then once I have that, I'm able to get the data that I want. Now, when you find there's an issue, and I haven't talked about it here, but there's something called projection, so that even though here I'm really only interested in the first name, the last name, and email, I could have actually modified the find request to only return information that's used, and it's called projection. You can look at that in the notes as well. Okay, here I'm finding many items using a regular expression. This is something that allows us to do a query that looks like a string that we would have if we were doing an SQL statement. And here we set up a regular expression that matches the email, and I'm just putting the expression. I'm saying that matched at the end of the string. I'm telling it to ignore case here. So all the normal stuff we do for regular expressions, and we could actually create a regular expression from the library as well in this particular way using the /MongoDB/bson/regex. But I'm doing it this way because I can. Okay, but work the same way. Then I'm finding all the records that correspond to the grey mail. For updating one, I'm just adding some loyalty points using the set command for somebody who was called McDonald. The first person that it encounters would have McDonald. And for my update, again, I'm now anyone who has a greymail .ie address is getting a loyalty points default to 0, so that's fine too. And I could actually have set and did an update many collection here. This is commented out here because I've already given everybody loyalty point field, but I could have added a field to all records by just having a null set here on the query, so it matches everything, and then setting the loyalty points value to 0 if I wanted. So then to update, I'm replacing. So you know, when we do updates, we often do replacements, and here I'm actually replacing this record for Alina McDermott with this record. Okay, well actually her name wasn't Alina McDermott, originally, but it's now Alina McDermott. Okay, and you can go back up and see that originally her name was Alina McDonald, so we've changed her email, her name, and her address. So now Alina McDonald, and the replace actually replaces the record maintaining the same ID. Okay, some information that we can just check. We can check all that detail on updates and results and get counts and numbers and matched IDs and all this kind of stuff as well. And again, I'm just going to update Alina's loyalty points here. That's fine. And what happens is that this upsert, you'll see this of course as well, is that if you look at the docs, what this does is it tells us that upserting is that if somebody matches. Okay, so if I have a search and we find a match between FNIM and Alina, it just updates that record. If it doesn't find a match, it just creates a record anyway. And this is what the upserting true is. So you can look at that if you look some details on creating details. So I have notes on it here, okay, for update and replace methods using upsert. Okay. Finally, I know that I have created this record here for John. It doesn't exist in the record already, so we end up getting a record that just has loyalty points, John and loyalty points, and we don't want that. So ultimately, I'm just giving an example to delete it. Okay, so you can comment and uncomment some of this, and you'll be able to work through and see the examples. I mean, you're seeing the full program running here. And we really really should break it down and look at some interim data that were created in the database as you work along. It's the best way to work and play with these programs that I'm giving you. Okay, some references for all of that information that was used here, and really that's all there is to working with CRUD and MongoDB and PHP. Remember, you can't use PHP with a remote cluster in a playground currently. So you will probably stick with the Node.js, but it is a good idea though, if you have got PHP set up locally, that you switch the connections back and forth between the two, your online and your remote instance, so you can get some practice working with that, verify it works, and also play with the code. The more you play, the more fun you'll have, and the more you'll learn. Thank you very much for watching.